Welcome to the Lifestyle Chase. This podcast features high performers who have found a way to live their best life while balancing their health, wellness, friends, and family. Proudly hosted by me, Chris Little. Without further ado, let's get started. Here we are for episode 28 of the Lifestyle Chase. My guest today is the one and only Dean Somerset. How are you doing today?
It's another day in paradise. It's the coldest day of the year, so I don't know if we can really expect it to go anywhere but up from here, right?
Exactly. So take me through your morning. How'd you start your day? What's your routine?
Woke up and took the dogs into doggy daycare because it's stupid cold outside, so we can't really take them for very much of a walk, so we just drop them off there. Came home, worked for the last hour on emails, sitting here with a podcast with you, and then I'm going to go in and train clients from noon till 5.
Nice.
Yep.
And how about like the busiest day that you had in like 2018?
The busiest? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
I guess the most event filled, like the most interesting, most memorable.
A couple of days when I was traveling over to Europe. I mean, teaching a workshop in Slovenia was pretty cool. So a day where you're just on the go from like wake up, go through, teach an all day workshop, do event in the evening, then go to bed and wake up and do it all over again the next day. Those are pretty busy days. So it's always fun to be able to do something like that. And in a country that English is not the first language, and you have people from 8 or 9 other countries attending where English is like second, third, or fourth on the list as far as languages that they speak. It's a pretty unique adventure.
Totally. Just like you gain so much experience from presenting to different groups and stuff.
Yeah.
What's your most favorite place you've done a presentation at?
Slovenia was pretty cool. I mean, it's an area that I don't think gets nearly enough credit. Prague was really amazing. This year coming up, we're going to go to Singapore, so I'm really excited about doing that one. But also just places where I know the people who are in attendance and who still value what I have to say.
Yeah.
So speaking in Edmonton is always a thrill because I can see the people that I see on a regular basis and say, here, I'm going to show you something I've been working on or something I've been thinking about, and they're into that still, rather than it just being somebody on the other side of the world who's had no approach or attachment to me.
Totally.
So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I have to do a shout out to Dean Guaido. He said to say hi. Something that I like to talk about on my podcast is I like to be a little different than the average one. And how many podcasts would you say you've been a guest on?
Dozens. I lost track. I mean, I think in 2019 so far I've been on 4. So,
yeah. And I think you've been on the Fitness Devil podcast at least 4 times.
I think 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I was like the first guest, the 50th guest, and I think I was on there one more time too.
I think I was listening to episode 12 or something in the early 10s or 20s on the way here. And it's just, you talk so much about fitness and stuff, and I'm going to dive into a bit more of like the lifestyle and like the background, the starting up story of like how you got into what you're doing today. Mm-hmm. So as a high school kid, what kind of a kid were you? Were you like a jock? Were you like an academic?
I was neither. I mean, I played on sports teams, but I was like the kid at the very end of the bench. So like if there was a bench warmer, I was making the bench. I was that far down the bench. So
yeah.
I was never really a gifted athlete by any stretch. I always wanted to be, and I always tried to play as hard as I could, but I was never there. For academics, I barely got by in some courses. So the ones where I was able to do pretty well in were things like carpentry, English, and a little bit in biology. So It was a little bit of a tough go, but at the same time, I worked as hard as I could, and I just did the best I could. Overall, I was just kind of like a quiet, weird, nerdy kid that didn't really hang out with very many people and was just kind of doing my own thing.
Totally. It's funny because that's a lot of my guests, and it's just like sort of humble beginnings turn into humble adulthood, and that's generally what I look for in the Lifestyle Chase. Mm-hmm. What were the subjects that you liked the most?
The stuff where I could actually do things. So like construction, mechanics, physics was fun because I was able to actually see how things worked. So taking courses like that, and biology were really good. English, I was just able to put sentences together and figure out how to actually make it make sense. And I got good grades in that, and I like storytelling. So those were always kind of the key classes that I seemed to like. Math, not so much.
Yeah.
Chemistry, I still don't know how to do chemistry. And it sucks because I took the MCAT exam, the medical school examination a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And apparently you need to know chemistry to be a doctor. Who knew? But yeah, I bombed that section really hard, but I got in the top 5% for the writing sample. So I was like, okay, well maybe medical school is out, but maybe I should start writing something. And that's kind of how I started my blog. I was like, well, the world's telling me I should be a writer.
That's awesome. What kind of like schooling did you think you were going to do in, say, grade 11, grade 12? What was your plan?
Initially, I actually wanted to go into medical school and be an orthopedic surgeon. But then I was thinking, well, maybe that won't work. Maybe I'll go in for physiotherapy. And I started shadowing physiotherapists in clinics, seeing what they did. And I thought, this is great, this is cool, but I really like being in the gym. So I tried to go in a route where I could actually spend more of my time in a gym, which is why I went through kinesiology.
Yeah.
I figured if I really liked that, I could stick with it. But if I didn't and I wanted to go through physio, I could take a graduate level course to get into physiotherapy that way while having the basis in kinesiology, which is a pretty common pathway for a lot of physios. But then I realized, no, I just want to help people squat, deadlift, and run really fast.
Yeah.
That's kind of the meat and potatoes of what my decision making was.
That's awesome. How did your career kind of start off? Like, what was your first year out of school like?
That was way back in 2004. So that was before social media. That was before most phones today had any kind of a thought process. It was the old flip phone Razor. So I started working in a commercial gym. And I was fortunate when I started up because 4 of the very senior trainers had all quit around the same time. And I was the only new trainer coming in. So at the same time, I had a whole bunch of existing clients looking for trainers, and I also had every new client coming into the gym who was looking for a trainer. I was the only one available. So I was a problem of too abundance to be able to meet the needs. So at that point, I was able to get rolling really quickly. But at a certain point in time, business starts to slow down and die off. More trainers get hired, more people go that way. So within about a year, I got to a point where my business was almost dead as far as being a personal trainer. So I was thinking, okay, well, what do I do now? Do I start working in the oil fields? Do I start working in some different field? So I went to Chapters on White Avenue and picked up, instead of going into the exercise section or the physiology section, I went into the business section. And I started reading more about business development, sales, selling concepts, and started using that thought process to be able to say, okay, well, if my business is the issue, I got to get better at business. So I started digging deeper and deeper into that concept and started being a little bit more professional about how I was approaching sales and business mentorship or business metrics and making it something that was a little bit more tangible for a profession to actually grow up. And from there, it actually exploded up pretty well. So I'm happy I was able to make that decision.
That's awesome. If you could summarize it into 3 major lessons that you learned from that experience, what would those 3 lessons be?
Learn more about business, because there's so many trainers out there who think that sales is a dirty word. You have to have an understanding of what sales actually involves. It's not about being a used car salesman or about being shady. It's about understanding how a sales process works in an ethical manner. From that, learn what your customers are actually looking for. Learn what your clients are actually looking for. If you can say to a client, how am I going to help you best? And they can tell you, that's what you give them. It's not really a difficult concept, but it's not me saying, well, based on what I see from you, I'm short on money this month, so you should buy a $3,000 package so that way I can afford to, pay my mortgage this month. That's never really going to be a good way of going about things. Also, just making sure that you can track things effectively. If you don't know whether you trained 120 sessions this month, 250 sessions, or 8 sessions, and you don't know how much training value that client has left on an existing package, you're going to need to know that kind of stuff to be able to make a reasonable go at it in a business sense, where you're providing the value your clients are paying for, but also making sure you're charging appropriately for the value that you can give.
Totally. And I'm lucky because I get to dive into it with all these apps and programs and software and stuff. Yeah. How did you do it back in the day? What was your structure?
Pen and paper.
Nice.
Yep. You have a graph set up on paper that says the number of sessions a person has purchased, and you get them to sign on each one of the lines for each of the sessions that they show up. And then when that's done, okay, buy another one.
Yeah.
The downside was if you ever lost that sheet of paper, you were hooped.
Oh, for sure. Did you do a backup? Did you photocopy anything like that?
No, that would require planning and being intelligent about that kind of stuff. That never happened.
But it's a practice that a lot of successful trainers in gyms do today. I know Shara at SVPT, she does the sign-in process, and it works.
Yeah.
Can't knock it. I think Andrew Coates does something fairly old-fashioned as well.
Yeah, I've got an app now that I can use that does automatic billing, invoicing, scheduling. It does all of that kind of stuff for me. So it's a paid monthly feature, but if it saves me 20 hours in a month of chasing people or trying to email people or miscommunicating as far as what a session time is or not tracking the number of sessions, that saves me time.
Yeah, totally. What I like is Google Calendar. That's kind of how I like can look back and see what I've done and see what sessions are completed. Then I use Wave. It's a pretty handy app, and then I can build that way. But like I said, it's just there's so much software now. It just makes life easier. We're gonna jump on the topic of social media. What is the worst thing that social media has done to the personal training industry?
I think the worst thing it's done is given a lot of false information easy access to the population. I mean, before social media came out, the only way that you could get bad information out was through print media, digital media, television. Usually those have editors or fact checkers to make sure they're not putting out bad information. Once in a while they'll say, oh, well, we're an entertainment thing, so we're just going to put this out there and see how it goes. Now, anybody with an Instagram account or a Twitter account or a Facebook account can share whatever they want, essentially without consequence. So it becomes harder for the consumer at the end of the day to pick and choose what's valid information, what's accurate information, what's helpful information. Sometimes stuff is just there because somebody has an emotional connection to it. Like the hardest thing to consider is things like, would a movement like an anti-vax movement taken place 20 years ago, based on the fact that social media didn't exist and it was harder for those ideas to get going. There were still things like email forward chains where people would just send bad ideas or grams or whatever all over the place, but it was harder to take root compared to today where an idea can go viral relatively quickly.
Exactly. Some advice that I've been given in my own career is just like find people with integrity to be your mentors and just follow their material and really like discern between like practical research based and then like the hype stuff. If you were to like turn on your bullshit filter, what would help you differentiate between good quality stuff and bad quality stuff?
Part of it comes down to where does the consensus lie? So if you hear a lot of people say something actually exists and that it's valid and realistic, it probably exists. If you hear a lot of people arguing about things in small details, maybe it's not that important to worry about. So for instance, if somebody was to say strength training helps build muscles and get stronger, and everyone was saying that the research backs it up, everything is good, and there's a few people who say never lift anything over 3 pounds. Do you believe the 2 or 3 people who say never lift anything, or the body of evidence to say strength training builds muscles? Well, probably the body of evidence. I mean, there is a lot of evidence showing that crowd thinking and crowdsourcing is effective at discerning information. Now, you have to understand that with social media, they're going to filter the information that you get based on what you like, what you click through to, what you engage with. So there's also a grain of salt as far as like, if you're always going down one path, you're going to get more information from that pathway. And a lot of political organizations are starting to key in on that and saying, well, let's start feeding more of this information through the filtering process to get more and more and more of this information in front of people.
Yeah, it's wild. And like the internet just changes outcomes substantially, especially with that like filter process. So there's been something that I've been thinking about for a while. Do you agree that dogs can create a PR in a lift? Like, do you think having a dog in the gym can help people with PRs? Or I mean, it's maybe. Like maybe not science-based, but it's just something that...
I'd have to see the evidence. I think that a dog goes a long way to helping create an environment where people might want to go to the gym more, or who might feel happier when they're at the gym, and as a result, their energy into the lift might be higher. So, I mean, there is a psychological element to that. Maybe we'll have to do a double-blind study where we put an actual dog in there and then like a stuffed dog. As like the placebo control.
I like that. That's awesome. I just think it's cool. Like more and more trainers, a lot of my trainer friends have a dog. Myself, like it's only a matter of time before I get a dog. It's just like making my life structure suitable for a dog.
We got 3 if you want. You can take any of them. Right?
Just like rent a dog for a day.
Dog rental, that'll be the next business idea.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. That's awesome. What are the 3 best qualities of dogs?
They're always happy to see you.
Yeah.
No matter what. If you've had a bad day, if you've treated them less than perfectly, they're always happy to see you. I mean, you always want to treat a dog better than you would hope that they would treat you, but they're always happy to see you. It's always unconditional love, and they love structure and routine, so it helps you to establish a structure and routine. Anytime you're laying on the couch and you want to just kind of chill out, they're willing to come over and just kind of get a belly rub and keep you warm and snuggle. So with dogs, it's just the unconditional love element.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do you think a dog could make a trainer a better trainer?
Structure.
Yeah.
Just due to the fact that, you know, that dog has to be walked, that dog has to be fed, that dog has to be given medication if need be, water. So it's something where you can't just like avoid the dog for 2 or 3 days. I mean, with a cat, they can be fairly self-sufficient as far as like a litter box, a bowl of food, a bowl of water for a little while, but even then you still have to go back once in a while. But the dog structure is definitely real. You got to be able to take care of that dog. So that adds into the element of, okay, you need to do X, Y, Z throughout the day, and that has to be more of a balanced approach versus just fly by night all over the place.
Yeah. And it's so important to take a step back as a trainer, just somebody that has a career that's maybe not always consistent. Because like there's people that want to be at a gym at a certain point of the year, and then another point of the year they just don't.
Yep.
We have to work with that. Having a dog or just something or a person in your life to create that structure is important, because like when we lose sight of our like routine, we don't know. Somebody else has to call us out on it. And if it could be a nice, friendly, lovable dog, that's probably the best.
Yeah.
My next thing is going to be on mental health in the fitness industry. Do you think it's important, and how do you think it could be like boosted more, given more importance?
I think it's massively important. And part of it is the fact that the fitness industry does draw extreme personalities from both the client end of things and also the trainer end of things. So understanding if mental health is a concern is something that should be available to all trainers. We actually have a product coming out where one of the people who contributed to it is a psychologist who helps people differentiate about what to do with clients that have a lot of negative thinking, or the trainer themselves who has a lot of negative thinking, but also how to get into a motivational mindset. So that's just like a component of it, but then understanding things like disordered eating, exercise bulimia, is there depression or anxiety or negative or irrational thinking? What does that look like, and how can we address that in a way that's supportive and helping people get the quality of information that they need? Huge. I mean, pretty much every client who comes through the door, you have to judge their mental health in regards to their ability to go through a training program successfully. It's not something where you have to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but it's like, okay, do I need to refer this person out based on what they're telling me and what they're showing me?
Totally. I just think it's so important to promote as a trainer, and like talking to you have a voice that kind of boosts my voice. A lot of times we take for granted that everybody is vulnerable in some state, and we want fitness to be something that they can hold on to for a very long time. And in order to support that, we need to support mental health in whatever way we can. There's a lot of like continuing education opportunities. I know there's like mental health first aid. I think I heard that Nate offers a program now for mental health first aid.
Nice. And
quite a few other programs. Is there anything that if you could recommend to people listening to pursue, like any courses or books or things that you found were really helpful?
There's a lot out there, and the best thing is just find the stuff that's targeted to what you're looking for and needing. I mean, a quick Google search would be the easiest way to go about that, but one of the best options is to have a network of professionals that you can refer to directly, or that you can contact and say, hey, I have this problem, what do I do? Because I mean, you can learn so much. You can learn easily about what the course says, but if you have a client right in front of you, that's a little bit different. So if you have a person that you can contact and say, I have this client who's doing this, and this, what should I do with that? If they say, oh, we'll just change the exercise, or if they say that person needs to be admitted right away, that's where you're going to have a little bit of a discussion. And then understanding what words and what phrases and what direction that your conversation can go that can be the most helpful, they're the ones that can help you out more than any course that you can take. There's still a huge value in the courses, but have a network of professionals that you can contact directly and say, what do I do?
Absolutely. Like staying within our scope and all that stuff, and just being empowered by a community kind of thing. Like for myself, I'm lucky. I know a lot of people in the city, and that network is growing and growing. I just moved into the Evolve umbrella, so just walk in the door and you have a network right away, which is wonderful. What have been the 3 best things about your own experience with Evolve?
Part of it is just being your own boss, being able to say, I don't like this policy, so I'm going to change it, rather than that being like, here's the set policy, do it no matter what. Other than that, it's just having freedom to adjust on the fly based on what the clients are looking for. If they're unable to make a certain payment, I can delay the payment. If they're, stuck as far as saying, well, I can't make this cost work, I can give them a discount. I can offer student rates, I can offer group rates if I wanted to. It's not something I do often, but once in a while, like I work with a lot of cyclists, like track cyclists. So if they're student athletes, they don't have much money to begin with. So I give them a student athlete discount, which can't happen in a lot of other places.
Yeah.
Having the ability to do drop-in fees for people without having them purchase a membership, that makes a big difference to a lot of my clients who might only be training with me once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because that saves them hundreds of dollars at the end of the year.
Yeah. And it's a nice approach. It makes it so that fitness can be something that lasts long.
Mm-hmm.
You see so many people that they hit a wall of like cost,
Mm-hmm.
or some portion of their fitness cost them too much, and it caused them to lose out on the portion that was the most beneficial.
True.
Our next topic, we're going to dive into family a little bit. I want you to pick 3 family members that can be parents or siblings or aunts and uncles that really made a huge impact in your life, and describe 3 qualities of each of them.
Tough one, man. I don't know if I could just pick 3, because like every person I've come into contact with has influenced me one way or another. Probably the number 1 would be my dad. He has worked for years. He just retired a couple of years ago, but he was a carpenter, had a bad back injury, came back to work as a custodian to be able to feed his family, and he would work 12, 14-hour days trying to do everything he could to put food on the table for the family. So when I think, oh, well, geez, I have a really hard 8-hour day, I would think, no, my dad was working way harder than that, but he never complained about it, never said anything. And then he'd come home at the end of the night dead tired and help me with math homework or help me with whatever I was doing, make sure my car was running. So he was one of those kind of guys who just had the engine and the work capacity to just keep going and keep doing things. Other than that, I have 2 older brothers who showed me what not to do when I was growing up too. They'd get into trouble once in a while, and I'd be like, okay, so don't do that. And that saved me a lot of time and headaches too. But they also showed me the things that did work, because they both had really crazy work ethics and were really gifted at what they did. So follow success. If somebody's really good at something, look at what they do and look at how they do it. Aside from that, probably my wife. She keeps me grounded and makes sure that I know when I'm not doing something right and when I'm doing something right. If I'm working too much and she's like, you need to pull back, she'll tell me.
Totally.
So just having those people in my life make me understand how to work really hard, how to pull back, have balance, take care of myself, but then also what works and what doesn't work.
And it's so important to have like these sort of pillars or people that are like non-negotiable, like when they have that kind of an impact on you, and especially when you're in an industry that like they don't just schedule your shifts. Like you could be super busy at some point, and really dead at some point, but either way you have to have like a head on your shoulders. You have to be motivated. Like working with people, we have to be at the top of our game all the time. What are the 5 things that you implement into your life to keep you at the top of your game?
Part of it is understanding it's a service-based industry. So you're there to provide a service. It's a hospitality element to things. Your 6 o'clock in the evening client doesn't care that you were there at 6 a.m.
Exactly.
You got to be able to give them the same energy and same enthusiasm as every other client. If you haven't eaten in 5 hours, eating in front of your client probably isn't the best thing to do, because now you're making the service that you can provide for them less. Being on time, being ready with a program, being able to have some adaptation to things if things change, that's all part of the service industry. And making sure that you're somebody who people actually want to spend time with and hang out with, versus having a personality of a wet napkin. Probably need to be that way too. So it's something that you have to understand. First, it's a service industry. Then it's about what kind of service you're providing and how you provide that service.
That's awesome. If you were doing like just any given session, do you have like sort of a formula of what makes a good session with client?
Not a specific formula, because everyone's a little bit different in terms of what their goals are, what they're shooting for, but also their personality type. So I guess a successful solution would be give them what they're looking for during that session, match my personality style to what their personality style is, and have them leave at the end of the session saying, that was great. So whatever that means in that session is going to be variable, but if I can give them that kind of stuff, it's going to be a good session no matter what.
Totally. Do you have a way of like closing down a session to sort of give a client closure kind of thing?
Yeah, I do kind of a recap on what went well, what we can work on going forward, what their homework is between now and the next time I see them, and then a high five. Every session ends with a high five, because you got to celebrate the success of them actually taking time out of their day, showing up to the gym, paying for a service that I was hopefully providing in a way that was good enough to meet their needs and what they were requiring, and also just what they were looking for out of it, and then send them on their way for the next day.
Exactly. And I think like a high five is so important.
So underrated too.
Yeah. Because some people are like, whatever, man. I'm like, no. Like, it makes or breaks the session. Like, you cannot miss the high five.
Yeah. I've got clients who, when they're done a set of like a metabolic finisher, they walk over to me with their hand up ready for the high five.
Yeah.
Like, that's the end of the session. I'm like, no, you got to do another one. Oh, that hand goes down, and then they go back into it, and then they come up to me with the high five, like, it's done, right? So it's almost like it's psychological closure for them at the end of the session as much as it's just like a thing to do.
Totally. So I want to talk about mentors. Who are 5 people that in your career you have looked up to?
There's a lot. I mean, part of it is other trainers that I've worked with who are really great at what they do. Part of it is medical professionals who were kind enough to let me look over their shoulder and ask thousands of questions. Part of it is managers I've had in the past, people I've worked with currently, people who I've never met in person but who I've emailed back and forth with. So I don't think I could really narrow it down to just 5, but there's dozens and hundreds out there. I think that if we were trying to think about just like 1 or 2 people as being the sole cause or detriment of success, we're kind of missing the forest for the trees on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Every person I come into contact with influences me one way or another, either positively or negatively, and that helps drive me forward in the direction based on what that experience is like. So like I can't really name just 5. If you got an hour, I've got hundreds of them. But
Totally.
The biggest names I could think of would be Mary Wood, who's a physiotherapist in the West End, who's sent a lot of people with me for pelvic floor rehab. Before that, Mark Lucius, who was a chiropractor downtown, who I've worked with back and forth. Tristan Zapata, who was the fitness manager who hired me for my first personal training job. Before that, Bob Gurney, who was an exercise physiology professor at university that I took. Dozens and hundreds. There's not really just 1 or 2 that I could name. And on top of that, guys like Tony Gentilcore, Eric Cressy, Mike Robertson, Michael Boyle, Ben Bruno, Mark Verstegen. How many do you want to name?
No, that's
Stu
good though.
McGill.
It's important because a lot of people think, because people are going to see you as their mentor.
Yep.
And when other people are picking their mentors, they'll just list off 3 and they'll be done.
Yeah.
Like they'll pick off some big names. Typically, they'll pick off somebody that's like really popular.
Yep.
And the answer that you gave is helpful because people need that perspective to look back and see how much they can gain from so many different people.
Yeah.
And how like essentially our interactions with other people are always a gift.
Yeah.
And if we treat them that way, we'll be set up for more personal growth.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest names that I could say I've had help from don't have social media presences, and they don't have products for sale. They're people who let me learn from them directly. And you won't find a Facebook page, a Twitter page, an Instagram page. They're just great people who know exactly what they're doing, how to do it, and are willing to give back enough to let weirdos like me look over their shoulder whenever I can.
Totally. And like I can relate to that in my own like career. Some of the most pivotal, monumental advice I've been given has been absolutely for free. Mm-hmm. And usually just in a chat, in like a private chat on Instagram or Messenger, or during a podcast or after, and it's always like genuine.
Yeah.
And that's how it's more impactful because like that person is invested in my success and they want to see me grow and flourish. Mm-hmm. And it's helped me a ton. I think attitude is huge, mindset is huge.
Yeah.
What is the toughest thing that you've encountered in your career in the fitness industry?
Death. How do you deal with a client who dies? Or how do you deal with a client who's terminally ill and is dying? I mean, that's something that no matter what you go through is always going to be hard.
That's true. Like there's no beating around that bush.
Yeah.
What would happen if you knew of a trainer, just somebody that had a client where that happened? Like what is the best advice that you have?
It would be no different than if somebody in their family passed away.
Yeah.
I mean, as trainers, we take on clients and we think of them as friends first, family second, clients third, usually.
Yeah.
So if somebody passes away, either accidentally or because of a disease, they have to mourn. They have to go through the same process of grieving, mourning, and losing a person that's close to them. So whether that's they have to go through the 7 stages that are clinically sought after or whatever, but some people are just really quick about it. It's like, okay, well, I knew that person was dying. Okay, they're dead. Now time to move on. I'll remember them, but whatever. Some people, it hits them really hard. And there's no real easy way of going about it or any painless way of discussing it or putting it out there. It's just, okay, well, that sucks. It's part of life. You have to grieve it. You have to mourn it. But at a certain point in time, if you feel like you're not getting through it and you want to get through it, that's when it might be valuable to meet with a counselor or meet with a psychiatrist or say, you know what, I'm having trouble with this.
Yeah.
What do I do?
That's so true. And it's, how many podcasts do you listen to where they actually talk about that?
Yeah.
And if a trainer is wanting to be in the industry for longer than that stereotypical 2 years,
yeah,
they're going to come across this.
Yeah.
People get older.
Yeah.
Life happens. How did that affect your week when that happened? Like, did you have to take time off from other clients? Like, what happened?
Well, the biggest example, one of my clients had terminal breast cancer, and she fought it. She actually started training with me after she was diagnosed because she saw an article where I worked with another person who was going through cancer. So she came in and started training with me, fought it, went through chemotherapy, radiation therapy, it went into remission. It came back about 3 years later and came back harder and worse. So she passed away after about 6 years of us training together twice a week. So at that point, it was like, I knew it was coming. It was still hard. It still wasn't comfortable, but mourn as best they can, but I can't really take away from the benefit of my other clients.
Yeah.
So I have to give them the best energy possible as much as I could without showing that was something hard going through.
Yeah.
So after that, we went to the service. She also had a big potluck remembrance a couple of months later. We went to that. I stood up, made a speech, talked about how she impacted our lives. And after that, it was just like, remember, make sure you can move on.
Totally. When you're setting up for a session and you've just had a rough time, like how do you set yourself up to be at your best? Do you communicate what's happened with your client? Do you just keep that on the down low?
Part of it is just being quick to adjust and being quick to change how you go through things. So if something's a hard session, it's like, okay, next one's up. Okay, get back to a grounded state, get back to a balanced state and say, okay, this next client needs your energy. Let's get ready to give it. At the end of the day, on a drive home or a bike home, you can have time to reflect. You can do all that kind of stuff. But that client needs your energy as much as you can do. Yeah. The old saying, the show must go on, right?
Exactly. I think one of the things I've found helpful, because like when L2 closed down, I had a client kind of right after we got the news, and I was ready to cry.
Yeah.
Because it was my first training gig, and I thought that it was going to be a go for a long time. Mm-hmm. And then I went out to train my client, and I just took a big deep breath.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, the show must go on.
Yeah.
And I think about things like this, like what happens when something happens to somebody in my family or my extended family, being my clients, because I agree. I had a client interview, just like trying to see if they want to be one of my clients. And they're like, so like, how does this work? And I was, well, basically, we're going to end up being friends. Like, I'm going to be a big fan of you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to work hard for you to be a big fan of me. And it's going to be a holistic approach to fitness.
Yeah.
So, and especially with so many trainers in the industry being like empaths, like most of the trainers that I talk to care deeply about the people around them and take on that baggage.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation that has to be had, because life happens. Mm-hmm. There is so much that can be thrown our way, like cancer, to name a few.
Yeah.
I mean, the mental health thing, like it's more and more real, and I honestly think like social media stuff is like kind of messing with it a little bit.
To a point, I also think it's opening the door to make it acceptable to talk about.
Exactly.
I mean, 10 years ago, you never talked about it at all. Like, it just wasn't something that was brought up. Now it's something where people are openly saying, I have a mental health issue. Here's what I do about it. Maybe this can help you. And other people are saying, yeah, that's me. I have this too. And they're actually becoming more open about it. So it's kind of a double-edged sword where people are being aware of it, but they're also being accepted for it, which I don't think was happening 10 years ago or even 15 years ago.
I completely agree. Like for my episode 25, I did a mental health special with Blake Lotes and Michelle Bagnall, and they're both known throughout the city for their advocacy for mental health.
Yep.
And we each talked about our own experiences with it, which was tough because we're talking about real stuff that puts us in a very vulnerable space.
Yep.
But if it wasn't for social media, we wouldn't have had that platform.
True.
I just see so much of like I guess people talk about putting your best self out there. Mm-hmm. and then people just think that that's just what life is, and then when they don't have it personally, then it can really mess with them.
Yeah.
But when a person's like super real and genuine, then that's when it becomes a healthy thing that lifts people up.
Yeah.
My next topic is going to be sports. Do you like to watch sports?
Honestly, I hate watching sports. I'd rather play sports. Like, I'd rather be on the field than watching color commentary about what's going on in the field.
That makes sense.
I watched about 12 minutes of football this year.
Yeah.
And it was only in the Super Bowl. And I shut it off because the score was like 3-0. I was like, this is boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your go-to sport to play?
I used to play a lot of basketball and football, volleyball, track and field. Again, I was never good at them, but I played them. So if I was to go into something, it would probably be like rec league basketball. I think I'm one of 6 Canadian guys who doesn't know how to skate. So hockey's just not going to happen.
Has it ever affected your ability to train athletes?
Not really.
Exactly.
Because everyone's human.
Yeah.
And movement is movement. Strength and conditioning is strength and conditioning. Yeah. I may not have the aptitude of the specific sport, but I have the aptitude in the gym. So they're not coming to me to make them a better skater. They're coming to me to make them stronger, make them hinge better, make them have better endurance for those kind of things. I can build all of that. That's not a problem.
That's sort of a miscommunication that happens so often.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'll see somebody that never played hockey training a hockey player.
Yep.
And, well, how can this be? But if that person is highly effective at making people stronger and have better body awareness, their hockey game is going to get better.
Yeah. Same thing as when somebody who's a hockey player takes yoga or Pilates.
Yeah.
When are you going to be doing yoga on the ice? You're not. You're going to use that to get better at what you do on the ice. It's not that you're going to be doing downward dog while you're trying to score a goal, because that's going to be a really rough position to be in. But
sounds
at the
like
same
a Yakupov thing to do.
You might be. You never know. I mean, Nail did a lot of weird things. Actually, funny thing is that when he was first signed to the team, he was living at the hotel that was attached to the gym that I used to work at.
Yeah.
So he would come in there every morning at like 6 o'clock to work out.
Yeah.
So he was a cool guy to talk with, but yeah.
Yeah, that was at City Center Mall.
Yeah.
Because I worked at the Sport Check there, right across the hall from World Health for like probably 8 months or so.
Yeah.
So I think I had seen you around, but I had no clue who you were then.
Yeah,
I
wasn't anything then. I'm still not anything. I'm some dude living in the frozen tundra.
You got a good, humble attitude. It's important.
I mean, when I look at things, it's like, okay, well, how big am I? Not really. I work in a gym. I'm not curing cancer. I'm not selling out stadiums. So why should I be egotistical or vain or anything like that? It's like, yeah, I'm just a guy who counts squats.
Well, I mean, we talked about how people see you and how important you are to people is, well, for podcast terms, it translates to a popular podcast kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt this one will be well received. And like, for me, it's not about numbers. It's about kind of impact and like sharing a positive message that means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
But while you might be very like soft-spoken about yourself and your career, you're very well received. Obviously, like, you don't see me strolling around getting presentations all over the world. Like, I would have to say, if I could take advice from one fitness professional in Edmonton, it would obviously be yourself, because of that integrity that you hold to be so important, and because of all the hard work, the grit that you put in. Because we see so many instances where a person just wants to be successful quick.
Yeah.
Maybe not like overnight, but just like transposing past experience into like current wins. But like, you've had to put in like some tough times. Like, what's the toughest career? Something not based on personal life, but work life that you've had to overcome to see your career succeed.
Well, I appreciate all the kind words first, but part of it was just saying, do I want to take this risk, or do I want to try this? If I was starting something like a blog or a new product, or saying I want to charge people to come hear me talk about fitness, putting yourself out there and saying what if it fails is always a realistic thing. Imposter syndrome is huge no matter who you're talking to. But at the same time, you have to consider, well, somebody else was able to do it before you, so therefore it's possible. So let's try it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that Dan John, who's a really famous strength coach, he had a great presentation that I went to a couple of years ago where he said, how to become an overnight success. Be a high school gym teacher for 35 years.
I like
and then
that.
You're an overnight success.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like...
You got to put in work, you got to put in time, you got to put in willingness to adapt and flux, and And then eventually the body of your work stands for itself, but you have to put in that body of work first.
People want the cake quickly.
Yep.
They're not willing to wait for it to bake.
Yep. Gotta bake that cake.
100%. What's the biggest win that you've had in a session? Maybe list 5, because I'm sure you have like 1,000. But something that like stuck with you and made your heart grow like 5 sizes.
Yeah. Well, I've worked with some clients that have had like cerebral palsy where walking wasn't a thing that they could do when they came in, and then they start walking. Other clients who come back after things like hip replacements or spine surgery where they're able to say, hey, I put my socks on yesterday. That's a huge victory. I mean, we don't think about stuff like that in terms of fitness. We think about, crush a max deadlift, hit a max squat, bench a PR, but the stuff that we take for granted every day is huge. A client who was able to say that she could go up and down a flight of stairs without feeling winded after a heart transplant. That's a big change, right?
Yeah.
So others were like female clients being able to crush their first chin up at the age of 40, being able to say that I'm stronger now than I've ever been in my life. So there's so many really cool things that people can do, but it's a lot of the small things that we take for granted that until it's taken away from you, you don't realize how important it is.
Yeah. My own experience, I have a client that she was waiting on an MRI to find out if she had MS or not. Mm-hmm. It's looking like she might have had a stroke at some point.
Yeah.
And like she's been through so much in her life. And we were doing a sled push, because a sled push is just something that I can have anybody do. It's like safe for the body. And she was like, I will not let this stop me. And she said that, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Because it resonated with me. I was like, we're just waiting to see if she has MS or not.
Yeah.
We're just waiting to see like what her future holds. And this kind of attitude, and the fact that like she takes pride in her abilities when other people don't even recognize that they have abilities, that they get to wake up, that they have all this ability.
Yeah.
It's neat.
Yeah.
It's like one of the most rewarding things about jumping into this industry.
Yeah.
Because I think you guys were talking about it in one of your episodes on the Fitness Devil, and I think Andrew might have mentioned it. It was just like, if you're going into the training industry, you're not chasing money.
No.
This is a passion job.
No. If
like,
you're in Edmonton, you're probably in the oil industry, depending on how the price of oil is going at that point in time, or finance or real estate or something like that. But training is kind of the low end of income when it comes to the money chasing realm. You want to help people as much as you can. Yeah, like maybe you get a free t-shirt and that's like the perks of doing the job, but it's his passion. Or a Christmas gift, right?
Totally. It's just neat to see how the passionate trainers in the city thrive, because like kind of part of it is karma, and part of it is just honestly like if you're willing to put all that heart into a job, clients see that. I've had clients Google my name and then they see just nothing but fitness posts.
Yep.
And they could Google a lot of names, and sometimes you won't see nothing but fitness posts. And if they have the option, they're probably going to choose something invested. And like obviously for yourself, they'll Google your name and find like 1,000 pages of education and blogs and material, and they're gonna be like, hell yeah, or this guy has a spot.
They might also find farm real estate available in the UK, because Somerset County in the UK is a big farm area, and there's a township called Taunton-on-Deane. So if they're looking for Dean Somerset, they'll probably find some great agricultural real estate sales going on too.
That's perfect, because people have various avenues for what they want to look for.
I mean, they can get their squad up and also buy a tractor in the UK.
That's awesome. Who is the most famous client that you've worked with, if you're able to disclose that?
It's Edmonton, so there's not really a lot of very famous people here.
Yeah, but this is an Edmonton famous podcast, so people here are going to get pumped.
Well, Farah's pretty famous.
Yeah, Farah.
Yeah.
She's the best.
Yeah, she's awesome. Absolute beast mode everywhere.
Oh, totally. Like, you can't turn back the intensity, because she's a high performer. Like,
exactly.
It's ingrained. I think she was saying the hamstring drill with the heel taps crushes her. So probably have her do more of those.
All the time, yeah.
And dead bugs.
Because it's hilarious when I get her to do those.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Aside from that, I don't know if you remember a long time ago, there was, I think it was like a Lifetime movie about the Walter Gretzky story. I had trained the guy who played Wayne Gretzky in that for like 3 sessions.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because he was in town filming and he needed somebody who knew about lower back injuries, and he was like attached to the gym. So I was like, yeah, do you guys have a trainer who could do this? Yeah, we got one right here. So I trained the Wayne Gretzky actor for a couple of sessions.
That counts.
Yep.
It was funny. Brett Kissel actually recently did like this post. I'm looking for somebody in like the Sherwood Park area to train me, and then in an hour, like thousands of trainers get tagged in this thing. And I don't know who he ended up training with. Like I'm sure they did a really good job, or perhaps he didn't follow through with it, because I know he was waiting for it in his hiatus before like his newest baby was born.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure he found somebody.
Yeah,
it's just funny how small town oriented we are.
Mm-hmm.
That like somebody he only lives locally part time now. I think he's like in Nashville for most of the time.
Probably, yeah.
But just just need somebody, and then thousands of trainers tagged. Like the funny thing is, I don't know if you're familiar with Rob Clark, who is also a trainer.
Yeah.
So he got tagged, and just the irony of it is like, yeah, no kidding, anthem singer and anthem singer just train together, just have it.
Yeah.
It's relatable.
Yeah.
But just neat.
Mm-hmm.
My next question is going to be, and this has an obvious answer, but I want you to come up with your reasoning for it.
Mm-hmm.
Dogs or cats, and why?
Dogs, because I'm allergic to cats.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's all we needed to know. So now for some quick questions. This is going to be food-based.
Mm-hmm.
Pizza or lasagna?
Cookies.
Perfect segue to the next one. The next one is going to be like, cookies or ice cream?
Both.
Nice.
Ice cream with cookies.
How's your nutrition? Like, what the hell?
Well, I mean, you eat good for most of the day, but then you have to have a little splurge once in a while, right?
Absolutely.
But you can get cookie dough ice cream, so you get the best of both worlds. Why choose?
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Talking more seriously, if you have a really busy day, what are the meals that you'll plan for yourself?
I usually don't. I'm terrible at that. So I'll have something to eat before, and then I might bring a protein bar with me, or get a Uber Eats delivered or something like that. But most of the time, my meal prep is sadly underwhelming. I actually don't meal prep at all, which is terrible.
But do you get good food?
No, my wife cooks dinner every night, and the days that I'm home, I cook dinner, and but I don't miss meals, but I still don't plan meals. So that's terrible.
I mean, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Well, also, it's just one more thing on my day to plan and organize and take time out that I just don't spend time doing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you're only human. You're not like Superman.
Yeah.
So it's good that you're honest about that. Sometimes I ask people, and they're, oh, well.
Yeah.
Here's
how perfect
Monday,
and dialed in I am.
I plan all these things, and I never have cookies or ice cream.
Yeah. And I spend 19 hours a week in the kitchen, and I'm perfect on that kind of stuff. And yeah, great.
Check out my recipes on my vlog.
Yeah. There is that, yeah.
And it's just important, because if it's just like the mental health thing, showing that people that are guests on podcasts, people that are like voices for their industry are human.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot easier to be a new person getting into the gym, because it takes away that intimidation factor, because like, oh, well, if this person who trains trainers to be trainers is human, then most of the trainers will be human. Therefore, I can go to the gym because I am a human, kind of thing.
Hopefully that's a connection they make.
Maybe they won't make that connection.
Hopefully they make a connection that they are human. Therefore, they can go to the gym.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are 5 tips that you'd give to somebody that's going into the gym for the very first time? What's something that you would do to kind of make it so it's not as scary?
Remember, it's a big playground. So play with everything that you can. Figure out what you like, what you don't like. Everyone who's in there had a day 1 too. So no matter who you are, how in shape, out of shape you are, everyone in that gym had a day 1 just like you. So don't feel afraid to be on your day 1 so that you can look at other people the same way in a little bit of time. Be willing to fail. Be willing to change yourself. Be willing to say, I like doing this. I'm going to do more of this. I don't like doing this. I don't want to do any more of that. Challenge yourself. Say, I can do 3 of these today. Can I do 4 tomorrow?
Yeah.
Be willing to say, I don't have to be perfect, but I want to be able to see that I'm making progress. Ask for help whenever you need to. Don't feel like you're obliged to have a trainer, but ask for help when you need to, or when you're like, hey, I want to learn more about doing this, or I want to see what this is all about.
Yeah. And like so many trainers are happy to give advice.
That's kind of what our job is.
Exactly. Well, free advice though.
Yeah.
I don't know any trainers in my circle that if you ask them, they would charge you money for answering how to do a certain thing. Like, especially because so much of it we get so much practice that we're pretty good at like tossing out a few cues that are bound to work.
Yeah.
And it makes more people enjoy something that we're so passionate about, going back to that empath and passion and all that stuff. Like,
but also you get paid back over time. Like I've had people where I've given them free advice and they've referred me 3 or 4 clients.
Yeah.
They haven't bought sessions, but they've referred people to me.
Totally. And I agree with that too. Like my career is new and green, but even in just like the support I've offered people, if I put out a post that's like, hey, I'm doing like this special promotion, 3 sessions for $150, then people who haven't trained with me yet are promoting it and telling people that they know it's valuable.
Yep.
We're going to go into the question that I ask all of my guests, and then near the end, like after about 20 episodes, I usually put it all together, put some nice background music, usually some Coldplay. It sounds really cool.
There you go.
But here's the question. If you were to give one piece of advice on how to authentically live your life to the fullest, what would that piece of advice be?
Probably don't make decisions based on what other people would think. Make decisions based on what you would think and follow actions based on what you want. Because no one else is going to live your life for you. That's up to you. All they can do is just judge from the sidelines.
I love it. That was good.
Yeah, man.
It's going to sound great with Coldplay.
There you go.
Thanks for giving me your time today.
No problem.
And hopefully see you around at one of your summits.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to come to Singapore, we'd definitely love to have you out there.
I'm in.